So I'm Kip Cantrell, my wife Michelle. We run Thistle Farm here, and we're hosting this event. And we grow garlic mostly, and shallots, onions. We do farmers markets and some wholesaling. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And we'll talk a lot about the farm, and if you have any questions, just let me know as we go walk around and talk about what's out here and on the farm.
Hi everyone. So I'm Jeff Nimmo. I'm our regional agrologist for the Kootenay area, and so I'm based in Creston here at the Service BC office. Stop by if you want to say hi. But really, like, our ministry's job is to try and essentially help farmers succeed here, and so it takes a lot of weird forms. We do some extension, and then otherwise a lot of it is program support. And so there's increasingly way too many different kinds of programs that farmers have access to. A lot of them sound really similar. Often they all have the same title or different versions of words all mixed into the same title. But essentially one thing that I think our ministry can offer is to try and navigate through some of that mess. Some of it is our own programming, but there's a lot of federal programming coming out related to climate action as well that can help you kind of navigate through where you might be able to access support. And a lot of that support at the moment is through money. There's actually, if you want to implement some of what you're seeing that Kip and Michelle are doing here, there are different programs to try and help farmers try it out or implement it on a slightly bigger scale. So if you're curious about what some of that looks like, feel free to reach out, or I've got cards if you want to get in touch with me that way. Yeah, otherwise I think Rachel mentioned our ministry does have technical roles where we have people working specifically on things like how to build soil and that type of stuff. My old before coming to Creston, my old hat with the ministry was in that sort of nutrient management and soil space. So if you ever want to talk about soil, I'm super keen. So feel free to reach out on that. But in that kind of shop within the ministry, there is a little bit of work going on in the cover crop space. At the moment, there's a UPIC tool for forages where you can go on and look at variety selection for different types of forages that are available through the province and sort of give a bit of a sense of what soil and types, what your intended use for those things are, and it'll suggest some options for you. And in the works behind the scenes at the moment, they're trying to move to expand that type of a thing for cover cropping. So at the moment, just doing a lot of the background research to identify which varieties should be suited for which sort of purposes, locations. And so eventually that's something that should be available, but sorry, unfortunately I can't tell you to go look at it right now. But I think that's probably the most notable Ministry of Ag cover crop project. Otherwise, it's more about some of the programs that we might have that might allow you to, say, try out some of these practices as opposed to information. But feel free to reach out afterwards or grab me here today and chat.
So I'm Rachel. I coordinate the Kootenay Boundary Farm Advisor program. I don't recognize everybody here, so it's this program here. This is a regional extension program, so funded by the regional districts to provide agricultural extension. So one thing that we do is we provide one-on-one support to farmers who have questions about growing soil, water, irrigation, crop varieties, and we connect you to either Ministry of Agriculture resources or university resources, and then we also do a bunch of field days and stuff.
What we have behind us here, this field is going to be planted into garlic. This is going to be tilled in shortly. This is going to be put into garlic beds for this fall. And it's, in years past at this time, we've had it be about 5 feet high. So we had some troubles with this seeding of this mustard crop this year. But this is actually a biofumigant mustard crop. So it's bred to have really high levels of the compounds that make mustard spicy, and its intention is to till it in and water it right away, and you flail mow it, till it, then water it in immediately afterwards. And it actually, what's that? Sorry? What's flail mowing? Flail mowing is a type of mower, which we'll actually go look at it next, just right after here, that mows with little hammers rather than blades that go this way. It actually pulverizes. And it's breaking all the cell structures and releasing those compounds is the idea. And it kills, so it has a lot of beneficial effects for us as garlic growers to avoid nematodes and wireworm, and then there's a lot of pathogens. So we initially started planting this when we had an issue with fusarium one year in our garlic. And so we kind of got in on this path and ended up actually in an email thread with Oscar, who's attending today. And that was kind of a start of our process of really intensely cover cropping and making it a really big part of our farm.
What's the name of the variety?
So it's Caliente 199. It's developed by HP Seeds in Moses Lake. And I actually there's a really nice brochure about that mustard that I have sent to farm folk, city folk, that if people want, like, I don't know if they're going to be doing a follow-up email, if that could be attached with that. Because it's a really great product, and its germination rate is phenomenal. You do need to irrigate because often, well, for us we do, because we're planting it. We have to plant it in the height of summer so that it's at its full height before planting garlic in the fall. So we're having to plant it in August. So we have to be able to irrigate the field for germination because there's just not enough moisture. Yeah. So we do this all by hand. We don't have a seed, well, not by hand, we have a tractor, but we don't have a seed drill.
I was here about, I don't know, May or June.
Yeah.
And you had a totally different cover crop planted. So maybe before we walk over to the flail mower, walk us through what the year just in this patch was, because you had...
Yeah, so we had over winter last year, we put in tillage radish over winter, which we had great success with, which has a really, really long tap root. And it's a beautiful crop, and you can actually eat it. It was actually phenomenal. It was like literally tons and tons of food in this field. We tried to give away a whole bunch of it while we could.
When did you plant it?
Sorry?
When did you plant it?
When did we plant it? Do you remember?
Which one?
The tillage radish last year.
Fall?
Fall.
It was like as the rains came in like early fall, I believe. It was like right around this time of year.
Because it's not winter hardy. That's one of the things.
A lot of it survived.
It did.
But we also had quite a bit of resting snow over this winter. So I don't know, that was unusual. We didn't have like the dry kill off cold temperatures like we sometimes do.
So it came back then, eh?
Yeah, and a lot of them, even the tops kind of gooed over and then came back. Yeah. So we tilled that in, and then we did a mix of oats and peas. And it was a very, very nice crop and was very, very thick. And that's when you were here, was oats and peas. Yeah, it was thick. It was actually very difficult. I actually learned you have to maybe cut it down before it gets too thick with your flail, because our flail was like not very much up to the task. It was a lot of biomass. Yes?
So I've got another question then. If you were doing cover crops through the winter and then in the summer, when was the garlic growing? Or was this like a fallow garlic time?
So we rotate through, we have a 3-year rotation on this block. So the back of our property is that orange snow fence you can see in the back.
Right.
So the very back section is where the garlic was this year. It's a bit hard to explain. You almost have to have a diagram on a piece of paper to really piece it apart, which I've done. You kind of have to figure out what your planting times are. So this had garlic in it 2 years ago. So that's why this was empty last year and this year, but we're planting into it this year. Yeah.
I was just going to say that's a very good question, because the windows that you have for planting the cover crops are limited here in our areas, because there's not too many things that are winter hardy. And that in California, when I used to work over there, the winter was mild, so we would plant oats and veg in the fall, and then by May we could be plowing it down, and then there'd be plenty of time to follow it with any kind of crop. Whereas for us, in where I live, neither oats nor veg are winter hardy. So those two are actually out of it. Yeah. So then, radish didn't survive the winter for us either, but there's fall rye, is one of them that would be winter hardy, and then there's the clovers, which are small seeded and they're very slow to establish. But
and what about the peas?
Peas is I don't know, Wayne, does peas survive the winter here, or?
Winter pea will, but the deer usually
If you got the deer. Yeah.
Early
but,
starts are.
but it's probably not a complete guarantee that it will make it through the winter. No,
You need snow cover.
it needs snow cover, yeah.
Did on your radish?
Yeah.
Did the deer and the elk move in or no?
No.
They didn't find it.
No, we find the deer and the elk are a bit more, they're pretty spooked down here. There's nowhere for them to hide, and this is a big bear thoroughfare. Like, they'll come and nibble at the edges. This fence just went in this spring, so we're kind of in a new situation now. But they would come to the edges and kind of nibble, but they're always kind of on edge when they're here. And they never really settle in and like bed down and really get established here, which is good for us. Yeah, so largely like our cover cropping is based on like trying to keep our soil covered. Because we're rotating our garlic, we have all this tilled land that is essentially just a big management. We just have to mow it or do something with it, which we struggled with for the first few years. And then trying to get cover crops that establish and stay established and established for a long time so we don't have to worry about them or do anything with them. Is essential and in an affordable way as well, because some seed can be quite expensive and short-lived, like buckwheat, which we love, but it's only 6 weeks. You plant it, you get 6 weeks, and then you got to cut it down, and then you got to till it in, and then what do you do with it? Then you're back in the same position that you were, and it's hotter and drier than before. So we've gone through like a bunch of different crops to try and see what works best for us. And then managing it around our biofumigant mustard right before garlic. So that's like, this has an established timeline for right before garlic, and then it's about kind of occupying the land and covering it for weed suppression on the off times from garlic. Yeah.
Do you have planted down then on your, down on the
Yeah, so we do. So we could actually walk out there if you want. I think it would be nice if you guys want to walk out to the end of the field, because we have another cover crop.
I wanted to mention about the biofumigant, if anybody knows what the research is out there, because there's a lot of beneficials in the soil too. You have, mycorrhiza, you have rhizobium, and I would just had that question: what is the effect of the biofumigant on the beneficials? And whether eventually they're going to come back, but it's potentially they get hit too. I would think.
I would imagine so.
Because this is apparently it's a fumigant. I mean, it's a natural source, but it is still, so it's something to look up and do a little bit of research.
Yeah, it's when we cut it, when it's 5 feet high. So a little bit explaining this crop. I used some new equipment and I ended up burying the seed a little bit deeper than I should have, and so it was very, very spotty, and so it came up very weedy, and I had to till it in. I had no choice, and I reseeded, and it did the same thing again. I thought it was an irrigation issue, and it was actually what I was covering the soil. It was a new technique. So normally it would be about 5 feet high right now, or 4 or 5 feet high. And when you're cutting that mustard,
flower.
and yellow flowers, like a big sea of yellow flowers. And when you're cutting that with the flail mower, when you're on the tractor, it's literally like, it's difficult to breathe. It's a big steamy cloud of mustard gas. Yeah.
Mustard gas.
Yeah. It is intense.
It works so well for the weed suppression. Last year we had 2 employees for 2 months weeding 5 days a week, just weeding. And this year it was 1 week of weeding, and that's it. For the weeds is amazing, the difference.
Takes care of the weeds too.
Yeah. We think it actually is fumigating the seed base, like your seed bank in the soil, because our weeding cost has dropped so dramatically, as she said. I mean, it's just been, in our first year of doing the mustard, we had one patch that had the biofumigant and one patch of garlic that didn't. And we spent all of our time in the one patch weeding thistle, like the entire season, over and over. I think we weeded that patch 5 times, and the other patch we only went through it twice, and that was, yeah.
I was going to mention a couple of species that are probably, because when you said that like buckwheat 6 weeks.
Yeah.
There is some clovers.
Yeah.
Alfalfa of course is a perennial.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're gonna how many years you have to go a cover crop, but There's also some biennials that I've been working with that they're very nice because they overwinter and they come back from the crown like alfalfa, yellow sweet clover, red clover. So you establish them the first year.
Yeah.
They overwinter. They come back from the crown. It's not the old plant that is
Right.
but it's a crown that starts sprouting, and then you get a full season all the way to the end of the summer when it then flowers. So
and if you
it's a biennial basically.
so then if you terminate it, then if you mow it, then that's it. It doesn't come back.
That's it. Yes.
Oh wow. Yeah.
There'll be a little bit of coming back, but not much.
Sure. Yeah.
Not like alfalfa, for example.
Right.
So what I was looking at, it was planting dates, because where I live, if you plant too late in the summer or in the fall, then the plant is too small, and it doesn't have enough to overwinter.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't come back. So I planted in July, sometime in July, I think it was late July, and I had yellow sweet clovers like this, enormous, in July and August. And then
Of the
now
subsequent year. Of the subsequent year?
subsequent year, yes.
Okay. And when the first year, how high did it, like,
I
got
have some
that high?
photos of my, yeah.
The first year?
No, second year.
the first year?
was
just-
The first year's like this.
Okay.
Right now I have some that I planted mid-August, which is like this, and then I'm still not sure whether that's going to be enough for it to survive, because it's like 5 months under the snow. Where we live, we have this much snow, and then they run out of everything they have. But I have the feeling that some of it is going to survive. But the second year was this high. Yellow sweet clover, red clover was about this high, but wheat competition was like almost 100%. There was nothing surviving in that because it was very, very thick.
And do you interseed it with something the first year? Like you're
Yeah,
growing that?
this year I did. I put some oats. The oats get winter killed, and then all that comes back is the yellow sweet clover or the red clover. But those are two possibilities. If you don't want to go to the perennials, which then it would be a little harder to, plow under and then not have them come back. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting, because that's a lot of what we're shooting for, is just holding land for as long as we can without management.
I'll show you some pictures that I was really happy. I sent
Yeah, that sounds
Rachel a picture.
very
I was
interesting.
so proud of my yellow sweet clover. It's just amazing. But then plowing it down, and obviously you have your flail mower.
Yeah.
Somebody without that, it's going to be, because the stems become like very thick.
We just purchased a flail mower. That is, with cover cropping, that's something that's kind of a barrier for a lot of, because flails are very expensive. And very hard to find used, and if they're used, they are beat to crud, because the people that have bought them for $9,000 used them for $9,000 and then are trying to get $100 out of them. So we finally found one worth buying, thankfully. But it's a difficult piece.
The other window that you could use here, which is like a late summer, early fall planting date for things that would actually overwinter. And then usually your crops are all gone, and the other one is the early spring. But then your plow down is in June, when you're
In the middle of other.
which makes it for a very short growing season. If you have to wait for the cover crop to get to full biomass
Right.
So I like this planting date in late summer or early fall, if you can get something to overwinter.
Right. So Nigel had just posed a question. Do you mind if I address that? Yeah. Do you want to ask again for the group?
Oh, I was just like, treat me like I'm a 5-year-old. What is biofumigation?
So yeah, biofumigation, and what it is, like at a base, like what it is actually, and how it's the compounds in the mustard, the spiciness in the mustard, which I looked up the compound last night and tried to remember for the life of me. It's a very sciencey name. If one of the scientists in the room could help me, I don't know, but it's
cyanide.
Is it cyanide?
Something,
Close.
Yeah.
So it's the spiciness it's the compound that makes mustard spicy, and it is actually toxic to pathogens and funguses in the soil. And so it is actually killing organisms in the soil. And that's why we started with our biofumigation, and often is used for shortening rotational cycles with crops that are susceptible to pathogens like potatoes and garlic. Because you want to rotate potatoes. I'm not a potato grower. I think it's 5 years, and garlic is a 4-year, and we are crunched down to a 3-year with our biofumigation crop. Yes?
Will it do anything with aphids?
I'm not sure. It's mostly about soil-borne things, soil issues.
The gas, it's like when it breaks down, there's a gas that comes out in the soil.
But don't aphids overwinter in the soil?
Yeah, I don't know
Oh.
the entire life cycle, but it might do something with.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it could be nice.
So is there a downside to it or not?
Well, that's what Oscar was kind of alluding to, that maybe the bioactivity in your soil could be adversely affected, because you're mustard gassing your soil for all the beneficials that could be there. But that's probably some testing could be done, and I don't know if it has been.
They say you have to wait 2 weeks after you cut, and after biofumigation, you're supposed to wait 2 weeks before you plant anything in the soil, because it's not going to be good. Like the production's not going to be as good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's also very time sensitive. You have once you cut, you use the flail mower, you have 15 minutes to
till it in.
And to
Which means
have
2
the
tractors, which is,
biofumigation.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
you need 2 tractors, one with the flail mower and one that's follow behind with the tiller, that just bring it in, and you have to water it that night, that same day, or the day after.
Yeah.
You also need the water to bring.
So you need
in the soil.
irrigation as well, which is overhead irrigation, so to be set up for that as well. So it's a complicated process, but it seems to have been really effective for us.
I have a question, Kip. You said that it's usually a 4-year rotation, and you've gotten down to 3 with the biofumigants. Is there a goal to could you lessen that even, or is that kind of as far as you would?
So that's kind of there's varying opinions on that topic with garlic growers. 4 years is what it's all over the internet, kind of the generally suggested rotational strategy from all the university extensions. I've never seen any research specifically on it. I've also seen many, we've talked to lots of growers who've grown in the same place for 15 years, and it's not an issue.
In the same place for 15 years?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a thing that it's not an issue until it is. I think that's kind of it's more a preventative cultural practices as compared to you're not fixing a problem by moving the crop. You're just preventing the potential problem in the future.
It all depends on whether you observe any disease.
Yeah.
So you rogue your fields, and when you find something like fusarium or white rot, then you better be on the 4-year rotation, because that's going to come back. Fusarium, I don't know, you have experience with it.
We had a really hard time 3 years ago with fusarium, and then when we got really panicked about it, and it's in the seed stock, and we were having to call out, and we were having to go through our crop many times, and we were trying to purchase seed from elsewhere that was cleaner, and it was this big hairy ordeal. And then we went around to a lot of other growers and looked at their garlic and realized that it was it was environmental more than I think it was an actual issue with our land. It was not just us.
It's in the soil.
Sure, and fusarium is present
in a lot of soils because there's many hosts for fusarium.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Many what?
Hosts. Different hosts. Not just garlic, but there's many other things that fusarium can survive in.
So because of that, because grain crops often are hosts there's this idea that grain crops are a host for fusarium. And so it got kind of us spooked on using grain crops for cover cropping. But then with a little more research on that, it's fusarium in the seed heads. It's not necessarily in the roots that is where that's held. So this is the first year, and that's where I was going to get to, is that this is fall rye that we have here. So all these little guys, all the small grasses popping up here, our fall rye that went in
Couple weeks ago.
couple weeks, 10 days ago. Could be a little early. It's too soon to find out, but
But are you irrigating it?
nope.
Okay, but you irrigate your other.
So we irrigate with the mustard because it's the middle of August.
Oh, okay, got
Yeah.
it. But you're
So
not
we caught that there was a good, really good rain coming
Yeah.
like 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago or whatever, and we got it in right before because there was like 3 days of really nice moisture coming, and we got it in before that happened. Yeah. I think that's
How long? So that's
right.
hadn't had the issues before. It'd be getting tilled in now, and then how long is the gap before you plant your garlic?
2 weeks.
So there's a lot of material in the soil at the time you're planting.
Not this year, but ordinarily, yes. Ordinarily, yeah, there's like, and that's why you have to flail, because other mowers, there's just like so many long strands left. And then that can be an issue for mites that overwinter in the foliage. Like if you have actual big chunks of plant, mites can actually harbor in there over winter. So the flail helps to break it down into like little teeny bits. It just pulverizes everything into little bits. And then when you till it in, it hopefully incorporates, where your wheels we have a rear flail, so where your wheels crush the plants down, it actually doesn't flail, which is why you see the bigger growers. I don't know if you guys at Kootenay Meadows have the front mount flail mower. The big front mount flail mowers get rid of that issue, because then you're flailing ahead of yourself and ahead of your wheels, which in an ideal world, I don't know, maybe the ministry can help me buy a fancy PTO on the front tractor.
Well,
Yeah.
CS tractors,
That's true, yeah.
they actually front mounted
Mm-hmm.
the flail mowers. He's the expert. He's got a. They're on order. They're on order.
Well, the front mount flail.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We ordered them, I don't know, in the spring. So,
Oh okay.
Wow, back
you know, global supply chain issues.
Oh yeah.
The Italians need to make it first, I guess.
When will you plant your garlic here? Like how?
Right. So the way to explain it would be, we have 1/3 that's going to be planted into garlic in the fall. We have 1/3 that's basically for garden and other things during the year, and then we have the end third is where we're harvesting garlic from this year. So we harvested garlic from the bottom third. The middle third has been our other crops, and then the third at the top is getting prepped for garlic in the fall.
You plant like end of October?
Middle of October. Yeah.
Middle to the end.
Yeah, middle. Yeah, we start in the middle of October.
Earlier, too,
Yeah.
depending on where you are.
Yeah, after Valley start.
This is like this all the way till about, I don't know, over there, all the end was garlic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this
And
middle
this,
part.
this was our garden. This was just cover crop.
Yeah, this was just covered. Yeah, we don't do a full third of actual other crops, because we get too busy with garlic, and we can't manage. We haven't found a good profitable crop that we can manage also with the garlic. So if you have any ideas, let us know.
Do you mulch the garlic?
Yeah, with straw. That's what all the straw. So we just picked up straw, finished getting straw today for mulching on the garlic. Any other questions?
You grow different varieties of garlic or one?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we grow, well, I guess we're up to 7. We grow 5 that are like our main ones. Russian Red, Red Russian, Georgian Fire, Bogatir, and a variety called Asian Tempest, which is like a really early garlic.
And deep purple.
And Deep Purple now. Yeah, which we'll have a little more of next year.
Russian red and red Russian, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a debate, and like it is different. We see the difference. We were skeptical ourselves, but we do see the difference in the two. Yeah.
They're two different families. One's a rocambole, the other
Oh,
one's a
okay.
marble purple stripe, and the Russian red we harvested earlier.
Yeah.
And it's not as good as a keeper as the red Russian.
So the red Russian is the marble.
Marble
The red Russian
purple
is the
stripe.
marble purple
Yeah.
stripe, yes. And
So is the Bogatir.
The Russian red's a little bit more mild flavor. The red Russian is really strong. Yeah, but they look exactly the same. I will not know the difference by looking at them.
So you may have said, but I didn't hear. But is this your first year growing the mustards?
No, this is year 3.
Year 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And as I said, the last 2 years were quite a lot more successul than this year.
This is the first fail at
Yeah.
growing the mustard.
Yeah.
Which is I'm a little bit worried because we will not get that biofumigation this year. I'm just worried about the weeding that's next year that I'm going to have to do.
Yeah.
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 Well, you still have, what, 3 weeks left?
No, we have to rest it for 2 weeks. You have to cut it right at, like, tomorrow. Yeah. It's going in. Like, it's got to go in. Yeah.
Like, if you want to plant by the end of October,
Yeah.
we have to cut it in a week.
It'll be easy to flail. It won't be an issue this year. Yeah.
Have you tried other varieties of mustard for the biofumigation, or just?
So when we first started looking into doing mustards, someone gave us a big barrel of like brown mustard, and I tried to frost seed it. I think that is what they call it, where you go like broadcast it on the snow in the spring, and it was terrible. It didn't work. It there's some of it came up, but not very much.
Really, you can do it with Asiatic mustard.
The frost seeding?
Yeah, I think that will work, and you can get that same biofumigation.
Oh, you can get biofumigant from the Asiatic mustards?
Yeah. You don't need to buy that special
Right.
caliente, but that company do make other blend. Some types will be a little bit more arugula, more mustard. They mix, and there's like a caliente 199, but there's another caliente.
Yeah.
And there's they have like 3 or 4 blends depending, like it's attacking like specific disease or pests that you want to control. This one was the cheapest, the first one that they start selling, but they do have more specific blend of mustard.
Yeah. One of the ones more interesting is they make a blend that has, I think it's radish and arugula, and it attracts the wireworm to the surface because the wireworm dives, and it attracts it to the surface so that it's feeding on the roots when you till it in, so that it's like timed so that you're actually attacking wireworm populations, which for some growers of garlic can be a very, very big, it can hurt. You can actually lose a good amount of your crop to wireworm. Yeah.
What is the name of the seed company again?
HP Seeds.
High performance.
Yeah, high performance.
And they sell
seeds.
small amounts, like 5 pounds?
No, well, so they sell they broker to other seed companies. So you can get it from a lot of the different seed companies. I think we got ours from Stokes.
Oh, okay.
Stokes 1 year, Seedway this year.
Yeah.
You have to order it in the States. I haven't found a company in Canada.
Oh, did you order it in the States?
Yeah, so both time we had to
There we
go
go.
and cross the border and get it. And Seedway, you can get it shipped to Canada, but I think the other one you have to go pick it up in the States. I haven't been able to find a Canadian company that can sell it.
That's one of the big problems with cover crop seed, because when you buy small quantities, then you don't have that many sources in Canada, and then end up having to buy 50-pound bags, which you don't use in 3 or 4 years, but one source that I found is Thistle Valley Farm Supply. It's in California.
Okay.
And it's groworganic.com.
Okay.
But again, I don't know whether they ship to Canada or not, but we've picked it up across the border. But you can get 5 pounds of all the different clovers, the different vetches, and all the grains, And I don't know whether you have somebody here in Creston, but we have Ellison's in Nelson. They carry a lot of cover crop seed, and you can buy it by the pound.
So we're very lucky to have Grower Supply in Creston, and they can pull stuff. We have the little depot, and they can pull stuff from Kelowna, the big Kelowna warehouses. It's not largely, they do carry some organic seed, but largely kind of conventional style stuff, and it's 50-pound sacks, and we're super lucky to have them here. It's a great resource, tucked away in the back of Creston, where no one has ever heard of it and generally doesn't go there, and they always think I'm Nigel when I go in.
Really?
Yes, they do.
Because how many
Nigel.
pounds do you use for 1 acre?
Oh yeah, that's the other. Yeah, so that's a big difference in cover crops.
It's like 7 or 8
So
pounds.
yeah, the mustard is 9 pounds or 10 pounds per acre, which is kind of crazy because it's just this tiny little thing, and you have to, and you can't. I'll show you the seed. I have all the seed out there. It's very, very small. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's kind of neat how you seed and the different
Yeah.
size of seed and all that.
absolutely. Yeah, and then so this for fall rye, I think it's 100 pounds an acre, which is much more strenuous when you're, yeah, trying to put it in. It's a big difference. But yeah, we can walk back and look at the seeds and the equipment.
A nice breeze out here.
Oh, it's a beautiful day. So I might start at the beginning of when I start with tilled land on like how cover cropping, just like in a like how I seed. So we start with tilled land on the back of the tractors, the rototiller. It's a basic, just really industrial, pretty industrial rototiller on our tractor. And so you have a nice tilled base that's just nice and flat. And then we run I ran with discs for a long time, straight, and making furrows with the discs rather than just running them straight, rather than you can turn them angled so that it actually turns the soil. But if you point them straight, they make furrows, so like a channel in the soil. And then I recently purchased this, which is diamond point harrows, so you can run that with the points down to make furrows into the soil. And then we'll go over to the wheelbarrow full of seed there, and I have my broadcaster.
It's loaded.
It is. So this is filled with, this has fall rye in it right now. So once there's furrows in the soil, then you just walk with this, and it hurls the seed like a lawn spreader for fertilizer or for lawn seed. And then you just do passes back and forth in a grid fashion. You usually do like a half rate, try and cover it twice, go one way, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then go the other way, back and forth to get even spread, because it's hard to know where the seed is going, especially when you're spreading something like mustard, which is teeny, teeny, tiny, and you're just cranking this thing and you don't see any of it even hit the ground. You just hope that it's going where you want it to go. Yeah. And then after it's down, so that you're hoping with the furrows in the soil that the seeds are going to kind of roll down into the bottom of that, more or less. And for a long time, for a couple of years, I was trying, there's the other part of trying to cover the seed. So trying to drag something behind the tractor that's going to cover it, but not bury it too hard. I had a door that I had chained to the back of the tractor, and I was doing all these crazy, silly things. And I had been told that a really good way is to take the diamond point harrows that I made the furrows with, flip them over so that the diamond points aren't down, so that they're pointing up, and then drag that on top. And that's precisely what I did with this mustard, and it dove too deep and buried everything way too deep, and that's where I got my really, really poor germination. And you can see where I was going. You can actually see where I was going one direction, and it was probably pulling deeper behind the tractor and buried too deep, and the germination was really bad. So now I've moved to I have now the roller. If you want to, we could walk up there as well. And everybody's welcome to play with that if they would like. So instead of doing the diamond points upside down, I just have started rolling with the roller full of water so that it's quite heavy. I would like to have a larger one. It's actually pretty small, all things considered, because the wheels of it's not even wider than my tractor. It just goes in between the wheels, which is fine. It's sufficient, and that's what I ran the fall rye with, and it got the germination quite a lot better. And I'm not worried about seeding depth or anything like that. Just it is what it is. It's close to the top, but at least it's not buried so deep that it won't grow altogether. The birds might get it, but it might grow. So, yeah. So I don't know if this is liftable. There's a few different types, but this type of flail mower, see, it spins like a rototiller, and these are called hammers. And some of them are chains, and then some of them are little blades. These are little blades.
two rolls with these little guys on.
Well, I think the roller in the back is to just pat the soil down afterwards or keep things from flying off. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. So it just chews everything up and leaves it.
Chews everything up.
And the roll at the back presses it.
Presses it down to kind of just, I think, just to even the soil out. Okay. They use flail mowers a lot in orchards, where you prune everything into the center of the alley, and then they actually, you just run it over huge branches like that, and it just pulverizes everything.
Really?
Mm-hmm. This is more of a light duty one. It's compared to something you'd want to run in an orchard with like a bigger tractor. This is yeah. But for vegetable matter, this is perfectly sufficient, unless it's 8 feet tall, and then it's not great.
That's the big difference between the field mower and the flail mowers, that a field mower would just kind of knock everything down.
Lay it down, right.
And get all sort of things that would wound up inside, whereas this sucks it up. And as you go over it, if it's in front, it just kind of, you can go into something this big and it won't bother it because it just sucks it into it. And when it's done, you're left with about this much on the soil, on top of the soil of the clippings. It's just very small. It's amazing because you're looking at something this big and then you end up with about this much.
As opposed to all these long pieces that are like sticks all over the place.
Which then get hung up in your rototiller too. Like if you have those big long strands, then it doesn't incorporate and it sits on top. It gets really messy if your stuff's really long.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
There's a kind of off-topic, maybe a little bit. Do you take into account the cover crops in your fertilization program?
So we have not yet. We should be testing more. It should be a consideration for us, but we've had this recipe for garlic with our fertilization program where we've just been like, it's successful, we grow beautiful garlic, we're not messing with it. So that's where we're still at, but at some point we will have to consider it and reduce our input costs, I think, that way as well. For now, we're also just trying to, like, our soil is it's silt loam. It's very silty soil. We need a lot of organic matter, so the taller plants we need, like the more organic matter and the more we need the soil to drain better. We need more organic matter in there. It's just porosity in the soil. So whatever we can grow, however big we can get it, we just want to get whatever we can into the soil. So we probably could be reducing, I bet you we could be reducing our fertilizer cost if we were testing more sufficiently, I would assume.
So it would depend on what you grow as a cover crop. When you're growing grasses or grains, which are the nitrogen percentage is lower, so you're likely not to be adding a lot of nitrogen in the soil. And this is why you always try to use legumes, and you can use them together with the grasses, and for many reasons, but one of the reasons is that the grasses will scavenge the nitrogen in the soil and then promote the legume to fix nitrogen. Because the nitrogen is not in the soil, and then so the two work together very, very well. I mean, there's no secret. I mean, that this has been used. That combination has been used since by native people, beans and corn. And then the architecture of the two, it's also, when you're using, many legumes are actually climbers, vetches, peas. So when you use it in combination with a grass, such as oats or fall rye, then they use as a scaffolding, and then you get a much nicer crop that is easier to manage rather than that something that is kind of in the ground, when you just grow veg or peas alone. So they grow up, and it's in that sense, they work together well in the ground and also above the ground in this combination because of the climber versus an upright plant such as oats and
peas. Peas has been another thing that we've done a lot of because there's this, you're like, okay, it's going to fix nitrogen, but we've had a lot of trouble with just peas. Like you're saying, we had a great success with the peas with a grain, but peas alone are so slow to germinate that there's no way those things are going to outcompete anything. It's just, they're cheap and they're easy and they're big and it's awesome and they fix nitrogen, but they need something else to help to grow quickly to keep the other weeds from coming up. This is also speaking of organic management. I should have said that at the very beginning probably, but we don't spray, because if you spray, then you have all the options. You have a lot more options at your disposal because you don't have nearly as much weed competition. But yeah, peas alone has been that's been a big flop many times for us. Yeah.
So if you're going to plant early in the spring, then you have a lot of options, and one of them would be the oats with the vetches, or the oats with the peas, and then you can even put other things in there for pollinators like Phacelia or bell beans, which is a small seeded fava bean that is also attracts a lot of insects and stuff like that. So you can make these mixes, but then, you know, if you wanted to let them grow until their maximum biomass, you would be plowing down in June, late June, where I live. But yeah, then you would get something this big, and then there would be the uprights with all the beautiful, you know, legumes climbing on them.
I have a covered cropping 101 question. The benefits of cover cropping versus simply mulching for an off season. Is it mostly like introducing kind of like live plant matter to opposed to like just putting straw or hay or alfalfa and mulching, or? I could speak to straw. Straw is actually, the breakdown of pure cellulose from straw is quite, it saps nitrogen. It takes nitrogen to actually break straw down. So for us, that's part of our consideration with our mulching program. But I think you're right. Like for us, if we could just compost our entire field and just cover it with a nice mulch layer, that could be very sufficient. But on this scale, it's the scale of that. Like I'm sure Nigel could speak to. You do a lot of mulching and compost, and that is very, very good. But at some point, when your scale gets bigger, it's easier to get more biomass by growing it than it is to truck it in and spread it and all this. There's probably other considerations too, but Oscar might speak to that.
Considerations. Well, one is the net addition of nitrogen, because the mulch is not going to fix anything.
No, that's right.
And then so a legume will be bringing nitrogen from the air into the ground. Then you have all the beneficials, the insects that live on this cover crop, pollinators. I mean, there's many things, like.
And roots in the ground.
Roots in the ground, the water drainage in places where you might have compaction, erosion. I mean, the mulch is going to do some of that, but it's not going to do it at the same degree that a living plant that is putting deep roots into the ground,
Which is why we did the tillage radish, is one of those ones that goes down below the hard pan, like when you have. Like if you have land that's been tilled over and over and over again, you get like a hard pan layer underneath where your rototiller reaches to the bottom, and you get like a compaction layer, I think it's called. And the tillage radish is one that sends a taproot deep enough to get through it, and then when it rots away, it leaves like a big core down through, and so you're actually helping to like break up the subsoil.
Is that what you'd recommend for like smaller gardens? Is more like the legumes, tillage radish? What cover crop kind of for a small garden where you're going to put in and then till it up?
And then till it in.
Yeah.
Well, it would depend on how long you wanted the cover crop, but like all the species are good for the small garden, depending on what tools you have available to manage the cover crop. If it's all going to be by hand,
Just a small tiller.
Like a rototiller.
If you have a mower and a rototiller, then a lot of these things, but also the cover crop could just be mowed and left on the ground as a mulch. And then if it goes through the winter, a lot of it becomes decomposed, and then when you go back in the spring, you could actually transplant things directly into it. Or you could even transplant things into a mowed cover crop that is not going to grow back. like this is something that you look in some of these different resources that we have, but there are some cover crops that would regrow after mowing and others that won't after flowering. So if you have something like veg, when it's done flowering, when you mow it, it doesn't regrow. So even in the same season, you could go in there and start digging holes and plant tomato, transplant, and then it won't, you know, you have to make sure that it's at the point that it won't regrow, but that's another way to kind of deal with it. But if you let it overwinter after mowing, then you're guaranteed that there won't be any regrowth, and then you can transplant into that is already kind of decomposed. And so there's many ways of managing, like cover crops. You know, people kill them by just dragging a T-post. I was trying to convince my wife to do that, and she refused. You know.
I wonder why.
You put supposedly other farmers have done it. You know, you put a T-post across your bed, and then just kind of tie it to your shoe, and then just kind of drag it across. It's kind of like crimping.
Oh yeah, the crimp, like manual crimping.
With old skis.
Oh yeah, there you go. What do this? You're doing the uphill walk? Oh yeah, that was like. I think buckwheat. I would suggest for a small garden, if you're gardening all year and then you're trying to put something in spring, like early spring, I think buckwheat could be a really good option. It grows really fast. It's really easy to kill. It's very succulent.
Yeah, it doesn't like frost.
It doesn't like frost, no. But if you want a short-lived something that you could get in and get some biomass, it'd be quick. Because like we do these longer ones because we're trying to manage and hold soil for a long period of time. Whereas your home garden, you're probably trying to like get something in there, cut it down, and then get it incorporated quickly would probably be pretty important.
What about if you did fall rye in the fall, did it in and then did buckwheat?
After, I just wonder about your timing for getting veggies in the spring, because if you're wanting that, because even the fall rye is only going to be, it's only going to be little by the time you want to be planting your veggie garden. I don't know how high it would be in the spring, basically, before you were planting your veg garden.
If you planted full rye, I would just leave the full rye, and then get it to be a certain size, and then plow it under.
Yeah.
But you might get some regrowth, because a lot of those crops, you know, if they haven't flowered, you know, they like to
come back.
Yeah.
Fall rye especially.
Doesn't
like to die.
Yeah.
You planted on the boat over there.
When do you start talking to your suppliers about the seeds that you're thinking to use throughout the
Well, with the mustard, we have that all pre-planned out because we have to have enough of that we know we need. The other stuff is a little bit more like, we can play with availability with like who has what. And we don't use organic certified seed because we're not certified organic, although we use organic practices. So that's one thing that we don't. Availability is easier for us than maybe some other farms. We bought a 50-pound sack of the mustard in efforts to have enough just in case. Hopefully the fertility of it doesn't degrade too much for next year. But the other things, just from grower supply, and they've been really good about having availability. Although I have heard that that's been an issue this year, especially for some folks.
Yeah, the main thought was just, especially if you're looking to try something unique, is if you're looking at fall planting, don't be looking for seed in the fall. Planning on cover cropping.
Absolutely.
With getting what you want in the ground.
I'm usually in seed mode spring. Spring is when I'm thinking about their whole seed. Yeah, I guess that's what you're alluding to. Yeah, spring is when we're pretty well in like seed ordering mode, and we pretty well order everything for the fall or the late summer. We do it all in the spring, early spring usually.